Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast. I am Paul Gallant, and this podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud. You can even watch the whole thing on YouTube. On today's show, it's going to be a quick one. We're saving some takes for later. Why? Because I'm back on the radio. ESPN 97.5 hired me, and I'm going to be doing a show that you can hear every single weekday from 10 Central Time till noon called Vanessa and Gallant. My co-host is Vanessa Richardson, who used to work at KPRC, Channel 2, locally here in Houston, and I'm really excited to get to work with her. We did a couple of practice shows together. We met for the first time at that Seahawks-Texans game, sat down at lunch. I didn't know that sit-down was going to lead to us eventually having a show together, but I'm really excited to get started. It starts this coming Monday. So that means there's going to be some changes to the Gallant Says podcast, which of course has been rather sporadic of late. I'm trying to make things a little bit easier for myself. So what's going to happen is we're going to actually move this to a daily podcast. That doesn't seem to make any sense, right? Well, here's what's going to happen. After, at least for this first week of shows, I'm going to be doing this show live on Twitch to get us back to our more interactive days, because I feel like the show's at its best when I am talking with you guys. The best way to do that these days is on an app called Twitch. So if you haven't already, twitch.tv/Gallant Says. Every single weekday at 2 Central Time, we will be on live. The show will still be podcasted. The show will also still be on YouTube after the fact. But if you want to get in first, twitch.tv/Gallant Says. We're going to talk to Vanessa in just a moment. A couple of things, though, I wanted to discuss really quickly before I get there. First off, I hate that this industry is as bloody as it is. And I hate that great opportunities for some mean someone else is likely going to end up getting the boot. And that's what happened to Charlie Polillo. I don't know Charlie Polillo particularly well, but I do know that Charlie Polillo is one of the best sports voices in Houston. He's been doing it for a part of 4 decades here in the city. He has been there for Rockets championships and brings a wealth of knowledge to the table when it comes to sports talk. And I've got big shoes to fill, but I hate how unceremoniously people are kicked to the curb in this industry. I've obviously found it out firsthand, both at 610 and at 710 in Seattle. It sucks, especially when someone is really, really good at their job. So I will share a brief Charlie Polillo memory, and it has to do with something that my uncle once told me. My uncle has been living here in Houston for also now, this is his 4th decade here, and he told me that he was listening to sports radio back in the day when it was first starting, and Polillo got onto some conversation talking about some of the best tight ends in NFL history. And my uncle, being from Philadelphia, brought up Pete Retzlaff, who played for the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day. And Polillo knew him right away. Oh, yeah, number 44 in the Philadelphia Eagles. The guy's an encyclopedia of sports knowledge, and I'm looking forward to see where he ends up next. It sucks that this is how this industry works. And I just feel like someone has to acknowledge the fact that this guy's a fucking radio legend in Houston. So I wish Charlie the best. And you know what? For all I know, I'll probably be competing against him in the near future. Anyway, another thing I wanted to talk about, and I figured there's going to be a lot of people listening to this podcast because of the announcement that I just made. But for those who don't know, I considered myself an honorary Washington State Cougar when I was in Seattle. I think that Cougs are a very fun people. A lot like myself, I feel like they care about being friendly. They care about having a good time in as many places as they possibly can. And I met some awesome Cougs while I was in Seattle, including a guy who ended up being a friend of mine. A guy who you always felt like would take the shirt off his back for you, who was there for me, one of the first people to reach out to me when he found out that I got let go. a guy who came to my birthday party despite barely knowing me, a guy who had offered to teach me how to drive a boat up there on his own boat, on his own time. His name is Gordy Anderson, and he passed away a couple of months ago. A wonderful human being, and a guy who was a Washington State Coug, played football at South Kitsap High School, walked on at Washington State, and while he had a back injury, still stayed a part of the Cougs program. You know, he joined the coaching staff, and clearly a guy who absolutely loved football, but he also loved human beings. I went to his memorial service right before I moved from Seattle to Texas, and I was blown away by the amount of people that were there. I mean, you really know how much one life touches others when you see the kind of outpouring that comes when something tragic happens to them. There was like 350 people there. And everyone had such positive stories to say about Gordy, who was this warm human being. And I miss the guy already, and I know that those closest to him, his wife, my friend Andre, others, that they've told so many fantastic stories about him. And I feel like we can all kind of remember Gordy in a way by helping with something that has been set up. It's the Washington State Cougar Athletics Fund, Gordy Anderson Memorial Scholarship. It's essentially a endowment fund that will provide financial assistance to walk-on football players at Washington State. As someone who always wanted to walk on but never actually had the stones to do it, I don't think there's many things that are cooler than something like that. And even better, just to show you the amount of people that loved Gordy, $35,000 raised already, and we're talking about only a couple of months. I feel like we can add more because I think that Gordy is someone who deserves to be remembered. So I'll have a link to the fund if you want to contribute in your own way to my in my podcast description. I'll have a small, the QR code on the YouTube version of the show as well, in case that doesn't work for you. But Gordy Anderson was an awesome person, and this is a great way that we all can remember him. Anyway, I'm really excited for Monday. I don't know how you naturally transition out of that, but Vanessa and I are looking forward to putting on a kick-ass show. And if you want to get to know Vanessa a little bit more, I caught up with her for this week's episode.
A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to say.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
You got f***ing grow up, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Joining me right now on the Gallant Says podcast is my new partner in crime, the one, the only, Vanessa Richardson, at Sports Vanessa on Twitter, formerly of KPRC, now on radio. Vanessa, what's up?
Paul, thank you for having me on this prestigious podcast.
It's so prestigious. We get to swear. You can swear here. You
Just
can
not on the
swear
radio.
here. Yes, just not on the radio.
Okay.
We'll learn this like slowly over time. So you're transitioning from TV to radio. What led you to make that transition? Because I remember the first time we talked, you were like, yeah, TV, I want to try something new.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. I think you would have to understand, which it's not that hard to understand, just the way local news works, which is it's a great way to start your career. And if you're somebody that's been in it for a while, like Randy McAvoy or Greg Bailey or Mark Berman or whatever, and you're at that level, it's great, but you're very limited on what you can do. So, if you're a reporter, you have a 1-minute sports cast every day, or 1-minute sports report. If you're in studio, you may have a 2-minute sports cast. Other than that, you're just not doing a lot of growing as a media, whatever you want, personality, journalist, whatever. And so I just had an itch to do more. I had an itch to do more than a 1-minute report. And I was able to do a little bit of that at KPRC. Like the Luno interview was obviously long form. I did some longer stories on like Marcus Jones from U of H. So every now and then I would get to pop out a longer feature or a longer interview, but for the most part, you're just very limited. So it just was that time to kind of decide, do I want to keep doing this job where I'm shooting, editing, producing, doing all this behind the scenes for 1 minute on air, or go somewhere where I'm going to podcast, write articles, have a live show, obviously with you. It'll be streamed on Twitch. I mean, it just, for what I wanted was a better opportunity. And I say for what I wanted, because it's not that local news jobs are bad at all. It's just when you're wanting to grow as a really whatever, it's better to do something that's more long form, I think.
And I'll tell you this, it's just more fun. You know,
Yeah.
I've had people ask me, hey, why don't you do TV? You're not ugly. Maybe you should try this. And I always thought to myself, well, I know how hard people in TV work. They work a lot harder than me. You got to do all those things that you were laying out. It's all for 1 minute or 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
You don't seem to have weekends. I mean,
never. And that's the thing. I was weekend anchor, right? Sorry, not to interrupt you, but so that's the other thing is never a weekend.
That's
And
nuts.
I have a weird situation where like I have a sick parent, my dad, so I wasn't seeing my parents. So there was a lot. Like I could probably talk about this for an hour of why I decided to leave local news, but the long and the simplest and most potent explanation is just that I wanted to grow more as in like the media world.
Well, we are in a podcast, so I mean, you can keep going. We don't have any time limits. There are no commercial breaks here. If you really want to get into it, this is your place.
I'm not used to this. Yeah. It was a lot of like we talked about, and you have so many friends that work in media. You're just doing so much behind the scenes, which I think is great. And you pay your dues and all of that. But when you look at the way and where media is going, and I'm always going to use the example of Pat McAfee, because I know that group of guys, and Pat was in Indy when I was in college. And, he's a good example of somebody that he just did it his way. And, worked for Bob and Tom in Indianapolis, which is a legendary comedy radio show. And then when he left, I actually worked with them for a while. And then he was with Barstool, and then he took a huge risk and started. Not everybody's going to be Pat McAfee. I'm not going to be Pat McAfee. But my point is that 10, 20 years ago, everybody did the same thing, which is you either did radio or print or TV. And now it's very multimedia. So I just think, and that's kind of a separate, like, interesting conversation. If you're a media nerd, like, these conversations are interesting. So yeah, I just wanted to do something where I could be more of a multi-platform journalist, and certainly love radio. But the fact that our new bosses, David and Todd and Jason, the fact that I said, hey, I want to write. I might want to do some long form interviews, and maybe we play them on the radio, or maybe they just become podcasts that we stick on the page. And, I want to cover the NFL Combine and make content, and do the show remote. They just are very open to innovation and creativity. So that's kind of the more in-depth version, because I think whenever you switch medium still, people that are old school are like, you're going from TV to radio. But that it's not that simple anymore. It's like you're doing something that's more in depth. So yeah, it was an interesting move that I think a lot of people might not have understood, but I know what I'm getting into and I like it. And I like what I'm about to get into, for sure.
I'm excited to see you in this field, and it's going to be fun to do something new. I know for myself, like, having done this for such a long period of time, there is a part where you're like, hey, what the fuck's next for anybody that's in this industry for a really long time. And while I did obviously radio here, and I did like a little local TV show where it was just me and John Lopez goofing off, essentially. Like, it was the most unprofessional sports show ever. There was a show. There was a show that we did once, Vanessa, where we did a combine where it was like an Olympic event where me and Melissa Henderson, who used to play for the Houston Dash, were shooting BB guns and then running a lap around the building, and we were trying to see who finished first. Like it was really dumb, but we were having fun. But in this industry, if you're not doing a million different things or trying to do a million different things, you're going to turn into a dinosaur overnight. And it's something that I'm trying myself to do the same thing with. And it's great that you're going to be doing all those things. And I'm with you in that the long form interviews, those are the best kind of interviews.
Right.
It's one of the weird things that both radio and TV don't quite get it. But I'm glad you brought up a little bit earlier the Jeff Luhnow interview, because this is your like, whoa, who the hell is this? She's grilling the former general manager of the Houston Astros. So everyone should Google that if you haven't seen it already. Going into that interview, what were you thinking? And afterwards, what do you think about that moment in time?
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, look, everybody, like every journalist and TV person has probably one interview or whatever that they're really proud of. And that's obviously, I'm 26 years old, so I still have a lot to go, hopefully, but that's been mine. Built a really great relationship with Jeff and his whole family. Really respected them, really liked them. And it was a great thing for me. And he and his family really appreciated it because he wanted to just do an interview and be done with it and then take time to decide what he wants to do next, which he has, because he hasn't talked publicly in a since the interview. So yeah, I mean, I guess looking back on that, what it was like was, I went to my bosses at KPRC and I was like, well, I want to do this interview. And, luckily my bosses were like, okay, well, let's do it right. And so we set up shop in his house and had two different photographers, what's it called? I don't know. One of the little cameras. Why am I forgetting a GoPro?
Oh, wow.
And just had it was very professional. And I had bullet points of what I wanted to ask him, but I also just kind of let the interview go where it wanted to go. And look, whenever you do an interview with somebody that's just been through controversy, like I even knew back then, there are going to be people that think that you're not hard on them enough. There are going to be people that think that you were too hard on them. There are going to be people that say, well, why didn't you ask this, this, and this?
Always.
So I knew going in, I did know going, and I'm thankful that I had the mind to know that, because it got mostly good feedback and reviews. But obviously, look, the veteran journalists that work for The Athletic and other media outlets that I won't name were like, what the hell? Like, how'd she get it? Blah, blah, blah. Which was always nice, because some people tried to dress that up. Like, I'm just kind of wondering how that came to be. And I'm like, that's a nice
jealous.
way of saying how the hell did you get that? But no, I'm proud of it looking back, and just like really thankful that they trusted me with that, because it was obviously something that he wanted to get off his chest. And the question that I got asked repeatedly, of course, was, do you believe him? Do you not believe him? And I've always said, that's not my place to say whether I believe him or not. I didn't work in Houston when most of it happened, so I actually don't think I'm even I don't even think I'm qualified to say that. But I think it was great. He got the chance to say his piece and to tell people that he didn't know what was going on, and to present that binder of evidence that he says he didn't know what was going on. And then just kind of go through his emotions of what that had been like. At that point, when we did it, it was October, and he had been fired in January. So, I mean, it was good for him and his family, and to get that off his chest and then kind of just take some time, which he has. It was obviously great for me, and I'm always going to really appreciate that he and his family trusted me with that. And yeah, it was an interesting experience. And then we made it a 30, the whole interview was 40 some minutes, but we had to chop it up into 20 minutes or so for a 30-minute special. The full thing, of course, was online, but yeah, it was a good experience for me. I look back and I'm like, oh, maybe I could have asked this or whatever, but overall and you know this because you work in media, people from the outside looking in there's always a fine line you have to walk when somebody is giving you their time. Like if you and I got Bill O'Brien in a one-on-one exclusive where he's going to open up about his experience with the Texans, people would say, well, Paul, aren't you going to cuss him out and all that? And it's like, no. Like,
there are weird expectations that are put on you by people that expect you to do that. And it's weird. Right. And you're going to find this out. It's because now you go from, hey, I'm just doing the interview. I'm trying to get to the facts. Now, after you do the interview, now you get to make your own conclusions off of that, which is, it's hard when you develop relationships with these people. I mean, you had to establish some sort of relationship with Luno where he was even going to be willing to, which is really impressive that you were able to, considering, as you said, like, you just came in, that's something that, you're coming into as an completely independent party here. But now that's the next step. Right now, all of a sudden you're going to be like, well, did I believe him? Did I not believe him?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I'm excited about and that is probably, Paul, like still one of the biggest differences, even though mediums are meshing and all of that. You are still in TV reporting. And if you're a writer, expected not to have an opinion for the most part. And if you're in radio, you are. One of the things I'm excited about with you and I is that contrast of where, don't get me wrong, I'm going to have takes and I'm going to have an opinion, but there might be times where you're a little more heated and more of an opinion because that's been your thing for so long. And if I have a guest coming on that it's not that I'm going to play it safe, I'll have opinions, but I do think that's more of your wheelhouse. And so
Are you saying I'm a hot take artist? We're done here. This show's over.
The blazing hot takes, the blazing hot takes. But yeah, no, I think that's one of the differences that I'm kind of looking forward to. It was like radio.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot then for you to actually judge a press conference, because in addition to being in Los Angeles this week, we'll talk about that in just a second, but you were at the Lovie Smith introductory press conference. Nick Caserio's there. A fire alarm made an appearance. Has your opinion of where the Texans are going changed at all based off of the way that entire day was handled? Because to their credit, I think that they did a decent job of portraying themselves in the best possible light after a weekend where things looked extremely messy. So, I mean, they took their ibuprofen, they drank their Gatorade, they shook off the hangover. But I mean, Jesus, over the weekend, you were there firsthand. What was the vibe that you took away from it?
The process was really messy. I mean, to have your team's Twitter account tweet out that there are 3 finalists and then to hire someone else, to spend 20 million firing David Coley for Lovie Smith. And there's a lot about it that was just so like, you like actually can't believe that it was as messy as it was. That being said, and I tweeted this too. It's like, don't disrespect Lovie Smith because of that. He is experienced. I texted with several of the players who could not have been more excited. They are like bought in.
Continuity. I imagine that goes a long way. If you're blowing up the whole shop after blowing up the whole shop, and if you're someone there, whether you're in a field like us in industry, say our bosses just get blown out, or you're in that, you're going to be nervous when all of a sudden everyone new is coming in because they have their own opinions on different people and they're going to want to bring their own guys in too.
Yeah. Process was weird. And I think, and I hope Nick Caserio learns from that because I want him to do well. I think he will, but look, it's the second head coaching search that they've had that's been really messy. And so he's drafted well. Nick Caserio has, which I think is what matters much more. But it was messy. The process was messy, but I like the hire overall. Because they're not going to be really good next year.
No.
I think they could be better. But they're not going to be really, really great. What Lovie brought up, and one of the reasons that I think that he is going to be so fantastic with media and with leading this team, is he brought up, the Bengals as an example of a quick turnaround. Now, the Bengals had an interesting situation because they got the number 1 draft pick and then got Jamar Chase because Joe Burrow got injured his rookie year. But is that something that the Texans could try to model within the next couple of years of we're going to embrace the suck. We're going to pick really well. I think it is. And just, I bring that up because the fact that Lovey had the mindset to say, everybody's leaving for the Super Bowl today. Let's bring up the Bengals as an example that we're not going to be bad for the next 5 years. Things like that, I think make him a veteran with the media, and then ultimately just the guys buying in. So I was impressed with the hire and really impressed with Lovey. Obviously the process was not.
Right. A little messy.
Is that a cat?
That is my cat. That is my cat, Aria, who is has just been sitting in the window with
my God.
the blinds down. She's not even looking at anything, and she has just been sitting there like staring at a wall. And now she has no idea what she's doing. She's trying to get in the closet. She's freaked out by something. It must be my loud
My voice, probably my voice.
No, she can't hear you. It's all in the headphones right now. I have no idea. Anyway,
so how many cats do you have?
Just one. Just the one.
Good.
Would I get two? I don't know.
Ooh.
Well, here's the thing. So I like both cats and dogs. Dogs are so much fucking work. Like, they're so much work. And I've always felt that if I can't give enough attention to the dog, I would be a bad dog parent. Where a cat, I can leave for a week and she's fine. She's not going to be thrilled, but if I leave out enough food and I leave a couple of litter boxes out and I leave out enough water, she's going to be okay. Where with dogs, it's like they're like your child. And for some people.
They are. And it's funny you say that because I have a dog and he's
what kind of dog?
Half chocolate lab, half German short hair. Excuse me. And what's funny is it's not funny, it was sad, but I wanted to take him with me when I graduated college to Cincinnati, right? But then it was like, okay, I'm never going to be home. So that would be cruel. And I'll be in an apartment complex. Right. And then when I moved to Houston, same thing, apartment complex with no yard, not to mention it's super hot, not to mention I was working in local TV. So 8 to 14-hour days.
Ugh.
Can do it. And so he's with my parents in our Indiana neighborhood where they have buku room. He's so spoiled, and that's hard. But like that, when you have a dog, you're right. You can't just casually leave a dog.
No. And some people need to be better at training their dogs, because some people, they have dogs and they bring them out and they're like, oh, he's just excited. And it's like, he is humping my leg. Can you stop the
humping? He is sneezing on my crotch, ma'am.
Yeah.
I always love that. Oh, he just likes you. Okay, well,
Sure he does. He just bit my arm off.
Right.
I actually just took care of a dog over the weekend, and it was a puppy, and it was a very cute puppy, but puppies too. I mean, puppies are a handful. Like, they're cute. And it's great when you're like the uncle, but when you're actually the caretaker and they're just barking nonstop and they all want the attention, and you're watching TV and they're like, ruff, 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 ruff. It's like, okay, it's, I need me time.
Dogs are a commitment. Dogs are a specific commitment. And I like cats too. We had a cat growing up that my mom was like, it was like my mom's homegirl. Oh. So I like cats. I'm more of a dog person, but you just have to know dogs deserve good homes. Dogs deserve places they can run around, big yard. And so I think you have to be in the right mindset and career and stage in your life to properly take care of a dog. You
just explained why it's cool for me as a man to have a cat, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I will make your Tinder profile and your Hinge profile.
You know what? That might have to be a segment that we do where we create each other's dating profiles.
And I'll make yours.
And we just swipe right or left on random people.
Yes. Oh my
hey, look, it's James. Ooh, he's got a big old biceps. Let's go.
Or the guys in Texas where they hold up their fish.
Oh yeah, definitely. So you guys have to deal with the guy holding up the fish. Yeah. I have to deal with the girl who went on a hike and has someone taking a picture of her looking off into the distance. That was the most annoying thing. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Look at the fucking camera.
Not all who wander are lost.
It's always a deep quote like that. You aren't kidding. And I get frustrated.
Quote from a book they haven't read, which is my problem.
Why do women not look at the camera sometimes when they're having a picture taken of them? Is it supposed to be candid? Because it always feels staged.
It's called a fake candid. I actually think actual candid pictures, like where you're caught off guard and all of that, are like really cute.
I think so too, but they never seem real.
Yeah, the whole like
See, that looks good though. You've got practice clearly. I don't know. You might have a little basic in you. We
we all. Well, you're more basic than I am. But
That's true. That's true. That's
we all have a little basic in us for
sure. No doubt about it. Okay. So in LA, and it's Thursday. There's still plenty of day left for you. It's not even noon for you.
Right.
Who is the coolest person, or what is the coolest conversation that you have had while you were there thus far?
So I actually haven't gotten to do much yet. I'm going actually to a dinner with our one of our future bosses tonight because
nice
in LA, and then I'm going to hit up a couple of parties with some of my NFL friends.
So you're just going to have a good time? Okay, no big deal.
Well,
I mean, thanks for the invite.
No, well, tonight will be more involved, but yeah, no, it's been cool. Like I think anytime you cover. If Super Bowl is the biggest one, right? But World Series, NFL Combine, anything that's a big event, it's fascinating to see the different people and how they move. So you're walking on Radio Row and you see whatever, ESPN NFL Live, and then you see Fox Sports and their show, and then you see the Radio Row, which is like boom, 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 boom. And, I'm good friends with Chris Myers from Fox, who's here and was like moderating a random panel. And I'm like, Chris, hi. And, you just see like a lot of people in a very not congested space because the convention center isn't like small, but it's fascinating to see that. And again, when you're a media nerd, seeing how involved everything is, their hair and makeup people, their earpieces in, and then, you have one person, Trevor Lawrence, who goes from this to this to this to this, and everybody's just kind of shopped through. So for me, being a first timer at the Super Bowl, that's been really interesting to see, because I remember I felt that when I covered my first World Series in 2019, the one that the Astros lost to the Nationals, where I was just like, whoa, like you walk in Minute Maid Park and it's like A-Rod and Frank Thomas over here, and then MLB Network over here, and then all these celebrities, and it's very involved, but it's really cool.
It's the first time I went to Radio Row, and you know this about me, I'm a Patriots fan, and it was in Phoenix before Super Bowl 49. Right. She's from Indiana. We'll get to, maybe we should talk about our favorite Patriots Colts memories, because I have a lot of good ones.
We're going to save that for the show, because that's going to be fire.
You have one that you can get after me with, where I actually got grounded for what ended up happening. But back to this. The first time I went, Super Bowl 49, the Patriots were there, and I was just like, oh my God. Oh, it's Troy Brown. Oh my God, Willie McGinnis. And I was even getting nerdy for like random Boston sports media people who were like, who the hell is this asshole?
Tom Curran or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
I love, you know what though? Tom Curran is different. Tom Curran is a man apart. Right. He's fun. Yes. We had drinks one night. That was a good time.
That's awesome.
But yeah, there's other people that are like, who the hell is this asshole? Why is he like staring at me like he wants to make out with me? I was like, I'm sorry. I just like listening to your show. Okay. You started off, because you're born in Indiana, correct? How did you get from Indiana all the way to Houston? What were the stops that you made along the way? Because I heard you mention Cincy too.
Yeah, Cincy was cool. I'm Terre Haute, which is like an hour from Indianapolis. So not a lot going on there, but it was a great place to grow up.
Is it close to French Lick?
No, but it's where Larry Bird went to college. So Indiana State is in, that's my guy.
Larry Bird, my favorite person ever.
We'll get to Larry. Okay, so that's one thing that we actually both like.
Yes.
So my dad was at Indiana State when Larry was there. So Terre Haute was a great place to grow up. And the Indianapolis Colts actually trained for 10 years in Terre Haute, like in my backyard. So my dad and I would like walk to Colts training camp that was back when it was twice a day, every day, full pads, right? So it's like, oh my God, Peyton Manning, Reggie Wayne, Jeff Saturday. It was a really cool time from 99 to 2009 to just be in that, in that area. So I went to college at a kind of a smaller private Division II school, University of Indianapolis. It's not a lot of people have heard of it. It's not IUPUI or IU. It's just, but it was a great education. And when I was a freshman in college, very wide-eyed and like I knew I wanted to be a sports reporter or whatever, I actually got the opportunity to work for a radio station in Indy. And here's the thing, it was a jazz and classical radio station. And the deal was I would do shifts, jazz and classical radio shifts. So I would be like, I'm Vanessa and you're listening to Ella Fitzgerald on the Diamond. Like trying to be like sensual and sultry, right? As
hey, it's me, Vanessa.
It's Friday night. Yeah, I don't ever want anybody to find those clips.
Oh no, now we have to. Now we have to. No, you shouldn't have even brought that up. No, I'm looking for that right away now.
But but because I did that, I got to be a sports reporter for that radio station, which meant this. By that time, Colts were training back in Anderson, which is north of Indy. And so I got to cover Colts training camp for the station and then cover the Indy 500, which is a huge deal, obviously, in Indy for that radio station. So I would call in reports. I would do a couple of videos. It wasn't anything extensive, but being 19, 20, 21, covering the Colts and the Indy 500 was, it's hands-on, right, Paul? Like you just have to. You have to be hands-on. Like you don't learn a lot in the classroom with media. It's all being out there, being in the locker room and all of that. So that was a great experience. I had a great aunt that lived near where the Colts trained at that point because they no longer were training in my hometown. So I would stay with her and go out there and do radio reports throughout the day. And I had like a little recorder and would be interviewing, in the scrum, Andrew Luck and all that. And so it was just, it was a good way to get experience. And then my junior year actually of college, Larry Bird's niece, and who I'm friends with, and some of his family members that live in Terre Haute were like, you should audition to be like one of the video board people for the Indiana Pacers. And I was like, okay, well, they don't usually hire college kids, but that would be a great start. And so I ended up getting that. So I would be the girl that would be like, all right, I'm in section 207.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And we would do like the St. Elmo's shrimp cocktail eating contest with Robert Mathis and Marco Andretti. And it was just like very Indiana. But in Indianapolis, Pacers games are a huge deal. And it's nothing against like the Rockets, but like in Indianapolis, there's not as much to do. So
it's a basketball state too, right? I mean, it's totally different.
Games are social events and they're what you do. So to be like a video board Jumbotron host for them was really good for me to dip my feet. So by that time I'm covering the Colts and the 500, working for the Pacers, and the Indianapolis Indians hired me to do the same job, which the Indians are the Pittsburgh
AAA, right?
Yeah. So I just really got hands-on, and that's whenever media people, college students are like, what's your advice? It's always just go find a way to do it. Go find a way to, doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't even have to be for a pro sports team, just do it. You don't
even need to major in whatever field that you necessarily want. If you want to do this, just do it. You're 100% right. I mean, I went to Syracuse's broadcasting school, but in retrospect, I learned I didn't actually need to go to the broadcasting school. I could have just done all the campus radio stuff and I would have gotten the exact same experience. And maybe there were some other things that I got a little bit of extra feedback on, but yeah, it's just go do a million different things. And
totally,
you'll have a resume coming out of college that nobody else will, because they all think just going to class is going to cut it. And it doesn't. You kind of end up with your schmenzer in your hands afterwards if you didn't do anything the whole way around. If you just come out of college, I feel bad for a lot of kids who didn't do anything. but I put in the work and it helped.
And, they do one internship and they're like, okay, I'm good. So by the time I graduated, which would have been in May of 2017, I had a really nice resume, and there was part of me that wanted to just stay in Indy, and because I had so many great freelance jobs, but I knew that I needed to go somewhere where I was on air like all the time. And so instead of going to like a really small market and doing the full-time sports thing, there was a station in Cincinnati that was hiring, and it was a long story. It was like the president of this company was from Indiana, and I had mutual friends with he and his family, whatever. So it was basically like this. There's a traffic anchor position at the NBC in Cincinnati. And if you take that and you wake up and you anchor the traffic every day on this really great morning show, you'll also get to cover the Bengals and the Reds and Friday Night Football, which isn't as big in Cincinnati as it is in Texas, but it's pretty major. So so I did that, and also did some news for 2 years. So I would wake up at 2.
Oh God.
4-hour morning show.
Oh.
And however bad you think that is, it's worse. It's like
I thought 4:30 was bad, and I had to do that last job in Seattle for a show that started at 7.
Right.
And then in Houston, when I was doing it with Mike and Seth on Mad Radio over on 610, also I was getting up at like 4, and I'm not a morning person. In fact, this week, Vanessa, to try to get myself, and this is for a show that starts at 10. I bought this alarm clock thing, which I have to walk 50 paces when I wake up so that I stay out of bed, because the snooze button is the worst thing that's ever happened to the world. And if your phone dies or whatever, it's like you're not waking up. No.
Yeah.
I have like 36 alarms to set up like 601, 602, 603, 604.
At least you know that you'll be on time.
Yes, well, hopefully.
So I was in Cincinnati for 2 years, and that was a great start. And so I did that, and then I knew, excuse me, I just burped because I had coffee this morning.
It's fine. We can burp. You're on Sports Talk Radio now. Like the listeners are all degenerates.
Yeah,
we're fine. We can just burp. It's fine.
I knew that I wanted to work in sports full time, so I applied for the job in Houston with KPRC. Got that. Great job for being, at the time I would have been like 24. It was August of 20.
Yeah, that's nuts. A big market like this, that's that quick out of school.
Blessing.
Yeah.
Huge blessing. So I moved here in August of 2019, and I had never been anywhere so hot in my life.
It's hot.
And my first assignment was Texans training camp in the Houston summer heat. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And, but really, I mean, I was at KPRC for 2 years, and although again, like I wanted to eventually grow, that 2 years was really crucial. Just getting comfortable on air, making contacts. I had covered Chuck Pagano and Marvin Lewis, but covering Bill O'Brien and that regime was very different. And covering all of these, I think I'm cursed because everybody, once I arrived in Houston, since then, every pro team has gotten a new coach and a new GM. And so covering, I mean, even the Dynamo and Dash, right? So
yeah.
So I'm covering, Daryl Morey and Mike D'Antoni, and then they leave, and I cover that new regime. And then Luno and Hinch get fired, and then O'Brien and O'Brien get fired. It just was like this 2 years of like Big J journalism camp, because, look, I'm not going to get too in depth on any of this, but George Floyd was from Houston. So we interviewed, and he was a damn good athlete. So for other sports departments across the country, it was here news people, not for us. I mean, it was news and sports. So I covered that. And then, again, won't get too much into the weeds on this, but the Deshaun Watson situation.
Oh boy. I can only imagine covering that with the lack of information available.
Yeah. And calling the DA's office and Rusty Hardin and lawsuits, and then covering the Astros cheating scandal. I mean, those are things that are completely like not what you expect to cover when you're 24, 25. Like, I'm going to move to a big market and I'm going to cover, a bunch of really cool events, and then all of a sudden you're actually covering like some of the biggest sports stories of the last 30 years.
And like serious, not really that sports stories.
No, yeah. I mean, it was, with the cheating scandal was actually kind of fun to cover, but yeah, like the George Floyd stuff, the Deshaun Watson situation, those are serious topics. And so, my girlfriends that worked in Tampa are covering, all these parades for hockey and football. And then my friends that work in Boston are covering, the Boston sports scene. But that was a good thing. I mean, it was a good thing. So anyway, that's a very long-winded way of saying, I really felt like it feels like I was at KPRC for more than 2 years because it was like so much. Yeah. Yeah, that happened. And that's the journey, is Indianapolis, Cincinnati, and then Houston. So
you cover that. You cover that many things in just a couple of years. You already basically make yourself a part of the Houston landscape. And it's good for me because I was gone for all of that time. And it was weird, like watching from afar, sort of defending the Astros, because you're like,
you do defend the Astros.
I mean, I can't help it. I like teams who cheat, the Patriots, the Astros.
I know, trust me. I was interning for Bob Kravitz during Deflategate.
Oh, Jesus. You're partly to blame.
There will be no Bob Kravitz and Colts slander.
Fine. I won't slander Bob Kravitz. I will definitely slander the Colts. Yeah, you're gonna have to slander the Colts a little bit, or pretend like you are. I've grown past the Colts a little bit.
I will be fair. I will be very fair.
Okay.
I will be diplomatic.
Okay, cool. That's good. And the good thing is too, it's not like the Colts are totally kicking the Texans' ass the way that they used to.
No. And the the other thing is that the Texans have just brought so much of it on themselves.
Oh, I know. They've made it easy. They really have. They kind of deserve it at this point.
You're at the point to where the Jags are in a better position. The Jags.
God, you're right. I mean, they hired Doug Peterson.
Okay. So yeah, Doug's great. And then they have a amazing PR person who's going to really help navigate every situation. Trevor Lawrence, I've heard, is incredible. So yeah, the Texans have done all of this to themselves.
They really have. Hopefully it gets a whole lot better. And hopefully the Houston sports scene gets a little bit sunshinier. And we will be talking about it every single day. I cannot wait to get started on Monday. So make sure you're tuned in, 10 o'clock, ESPN app. You can watch it on the ESPN Twitch. And I'm sure we'll have a podcast link, all sorts of different things. Vanessa, thank you so much for stopping by. And let's go. Let's get it.
Paul, so excited. Or should I say Gallant?
You say whatever you want. I mean, some people call me Paulie G. Some person used to call me Bootsy.
Bootsy?
Yeah, Josh Ennis used to call me Bootsy because he thought I was so young my first day when I came on to the job. Like 22. He was like, who is this kid? Is he allowed to work here?
I do get the whole like being an infant and surrounded by, I mean, I'll never forget my first NFL combine when I met, media people and coaches. And I was a college student in Indy, so I was young, and they're like, where do you fit into this scenario? And I'm sure it was the same with you at 6'10", but to your credit, you really built something around it. So I think that's awesome.
I hope so at the very least. And we're going to build more stuff. It's going to be fun. So make sure you're tuned in. Vanessa, you're the best.
Thanks, Paul. See you Monday.
Big thanks to everybody who tuned into today's episode of the Gallant Says podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, review, like, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or YouTube. Of course, going forward, at least for this coming week, we're going to be doing this show live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says. You can catch it 2 o'clock Central Time every single day. If you want to interact with the show, talk to me live as it's going. That's how you do it. So please subscribe along the way. Until Monday with the debut of the Vanessa and Gallant Show.